So the Wayward Children books are very classic portal fantasy, kind of inspired by both the British children's literature of the early 1900s and American children's television of the 1980s. This idea that you could open a door and on the other side is a magical world where the rules are different and kids get to be heroes. There is a comic called XKCD, which has been going for a very long time now. It's a web comic. It's all stick figures having little stick figure adventures, and it is surprisingly clever and frequently very, very moving. And there's an XKCD comic that is basically all those children who went through Portal Fantasy Adventures must be so screwed up after they come home because you're 12 years old and you just saved all of Narnia. You are a hero. Everyone respects you and listens to you. And you come back through the door and you are back in your parents' kitchen and you're expected to unload the dishwasher and go to bed. And how much does that mess with your head? When you know for a fact that you have just had this marvelous experience, you've experienced so much growth as a person, but nobody believes you, no one will listen to you, and they keep talking down to you and trying to push you back into the box they believe you fit. America frequently has a problem with not believing that children are people, not really internalizing the idea that children are people. And that doesn't mean that you can let a toddler run out into the snow without a jacket just because they don't know any better because they're expressing their autonomy or whatever. But when your 12-year-old says, I don't like Brussels sprouts, they are the most disgustingest, awfulest thing, if they are willing to eat any vegetable in the world, why are you going to force them to eat Brussels sprouts? Or if your child says, Daddy's been touching me in the bathroom, why would you go, no, that's not happening? And we see a lot of this children are not people extension in things like the book bans and the attempts to interfere in curriculums. I believe I mentioned my girlfriend earlier in this. I didn't have access to a lot of books about gay teenagers when I figured out that I was gay. Books did not make me gay. If books could actually force your children to have a sexuality, I would be so straight. I was reading the complete works of Stephen King. I was reading about straight people having straight adventures, and that was the only shape I had. But we don't want to acknowledge that children are going to form these ideas and these personalities and these personal attributes, whatever we think. And so there's a lot of resistance to that. And I think Portal Fantasy really is born out of the desire to put children into a place where they can just be people and make their decisions on their own. I occasionally get the criticism of if you read all the Wayward Children books back to back, wow, Seanan Mcguire hits the drum of kids are people too really hard. Why does she do that? Well, because some people still don't have the message. I grew up on 1980s children's television, which was weirdly the last golden age of portal fiction. Almost all of the children's television that we had then was secretly a toy commercial that had been polished up and put on TV with more commercials in the middle of it to try to encourage us to buy the characters that we were seeing. And what they were doing at that point in time to make playing with those characters seem more appealing was they would put a child just like you into the situation through that portal fantasy mechanism. My Little Pony is a portal fantasy. Megan is kidnapped from on the other side of the rainbow by a pink flying Pegasus and taken back to Ponyland. The Care Bears are a portal fantasy. About the only 1980s children's cartoon I can think of that wasn't explicitly a portal fantasy was either the aliens have come to Earth, like Dino Saucers, the aliens have come out of the Earth, like the Inhumanoids, or the aliens are staying very far away from Earth, like Rainbow Bright. Though there was an alien based functional portal fantasy called Galaxy High, where a couple of Earth teenagers were kidnapped to a space school. And it was great. And so the idea, as it were, for Wayward Children really comes from way too much engagement with children's literature and children's television because every adult was a child and was a person. And some of us formed a lot of our interests at that point in time and just decided not to give them up. We moved them to a slightly more adult level and learned how to monetize them. Jack is probably my favorite of the Wayward Children because she is ridiculously easy to write. She is smarter than everyone else. But unlike most people who grew up as the smartest kid in their class, she has never been forced to, required to, or encouraged to learn how to filter that back at all. So Jack will just tell you what Jack thinks, and will do so in the most incredibly blunt of terms. And it's very soothing, honestly, just to have a character who's actively smarter than everyone else be like, yeah, you know what? No, at all times. She is a joy and a delight. I had always wanted to be nominated for a Nebula, but I never was because I write very commercial fiction, and that does not tend to appeal as much to Nebula voters. There have been a couple times when I was disappointed because I had thought that I really pushed into something more genre breaking and more, high concept and not been acknowledged. When I did win the Nebula, I was sitting at a table with the at the time head of my imprint, Tor.com, and what neither of us realized was that she had put her chair on the hem of my ball gown. So they said my name, and I sat there for a couple seconds just being stunned. And then the people at my table were like, no, no, Seanan, that's you. You have to go. So I stood up and tried to move, and Irene's chair was on my dress, and I fell down. And everyone thought I had fainted. And it's like, no, I literally, there's a chair on my dress. So they got me free. I don't remember what I said at all. I think I had a speech. I had a very pretty dress. It was very fluffy, and it was a clear target for chair legs. The Nebula is the perfect murder weapon science fiction award. It's basically a rectangular block of lucite. So you could sterilize that thing really, really easy. It's very big and very heavy, but it has no metal in it at all. So I was able to carry it through TSA and take it with me on my Southwest flight home. And thankfully, it was not a full flight. So the flight attendants actually buckled my Nebula into the seat next to me and let it ride as a passenger. And they made an announcement at how they had a celebrity on board. It was not me, it was the Nebula Award. But that was very nice. So Mislaid in Parts Half Known is really the second half of Anstey's story, which began in Lost in the Moment and Found. I took the title directly from a lyric by a British songwriter named Tallis Kimberly, who is absolutely delightful. And Anstey went to the shop where the lost things go, which is sort of like a giant universal goodwill. If something gets lost, it winds up in the shop where the lost things go. And that includes doors that are not currently in use by their kids. They'll just appear all over it, like the big door warehouse in Monsters Incorporated, and you can go through them to the worlds on the other side. But even in the shop where the lost things go, you can lose things, and that will happen if you're not careful. So Mislaid in Parts Half Known is kind of dealing with closing out Anstey's character arc, setting up some characters for the next few things that are coming along. And as you mentioned, dinosaurs, we get to see Stephanie again, who was a former student that disappeared a couple books ago. And Stephanie, much as I love her, falls into the category that I refer to as students without stories. Because Stephanie went to a dinosaur world. She literally went to Pangaea, in a world where mammals really have not happened yet. And she found a family of Utahraptors that adopted her, so she lives with the dinosaurs. She's not going to fight the dinosaurs. There's no evil empire there. There are no villains. It's prehistory. There are no other people, and she does not want there to be other people because she does not like people. She's a misanthrope. She's happy with her dinosaurs. And Stephanie has accepted the fact that she will probably die much younger than she would have if she had stayed on Earth because there's no medical care where she is. If she gets an inflamed appendix, she's just toast. But she's okay with that if it means that she can live exactly the life that she wants to live up until that point. And the life she wants to live is running through a giant primeval forest with her dinosaurs. So there may eventually be a story on Stephanie's world, but I haven't found it yet. And even her first journey there really doesn't have a story because the story is, I found dinosaurs. They were nice. We had a good time. Yay. And that's not a lot. There's no conflict there. Adrift in Currents Clean and Clear is an even numbered Wayward Children book, which means, so the Wayward Children books alternate. The odd numbers are set at or around the school, and they push the plot in our world forward. They move things into the next stage of where that plot is going to go. The even numbered books take place before the school, or occasionally, I suppose, after the school, and they are set entirely in the portal worlds. Some of the odd number books will be largely in the portal worlds, but they start as a quest in our world for that to happen. Nadja, who is a character that we first met in book 3, Beneath the Sugar Sky, is a Russian orphan who was adopted by an American family, who eventually found her way to Belareka, the land beneath the lake, which is one of the drowned worlds. So it is a world where everything is water, and people form familial bonds with giant turtles to be able to farm and perform acts of industry and survive their lives. And Nadja, when she first fell through the pond and wound up in Belareka, lived a whole life there. She lived there for much, much longer than anyone would think. And when she was drugged back into our world, only minutes had passed. So it's a Narnia situation where you grow up and then you come back and you find out you're not grown up anymore. And that has happened to a couple of the characters, not all of them. It's not a majority, but it does occur more often than anyone would really care for. So since that is a preschool book, we know how it ends going in. We know at the beginning that Nadja is going to get thrust back into our world and have to live with the consequences of what happened. And we know how her story is going to end because it ended in book 3.